Good evening, everyone. Let's begin with a moment of silence and reflection for about 15 or 20 seconds, and we'll get started. Thank you very much. We'll officially call the meeting to order, and it sure is nice to see this many shiny, happy faces at the Town of Holden Beach regular monthly meeting. And welcome, and always come back for those of you this is your first time. Let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, which is to my right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A reminder to all of you that the agenda copies and other documents pertaining to this meeting are available to you in the back of the room, that corner. If you cannot hear, if you raise your hand, I'll remind the commissioners to talk into the microphone. Okay? So just raise your hand if you can't hear. Number 4, consideration of approving the agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimously approved. Number 5, the consideration of approving the minutes from the September the 19th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
You've got it.
Second.
Who made the motion?
Finish the motion.
I move approval.
Second.
All right. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We're now on number 6, and we're going to have one speaker tonight, Mr. Mike Sullivan, 648 OBW. You have the floor, sir. Speak into the microphone, please.
Well, good evening. The reason I'm here speaking tonight is because the Board of Commissioners is going to decide which consultant to hire to work on the sewer remodeling and to improve the vulnerability of the component parts. Last meeting I was unavailable when it was on the agenda, and Dennis Harrington kindly read a letter into the record which I had drafted. So there's no reason for me to go through that letter again. But in essence, it's that Leo Green, who owns property on the island, was a member of the Sewer Advisory Committee, and he's an engineer. And Mr. Green was invaluable in drafting and helping the committee to make an evaluation of the current system and the needed modifications and revisions. Mr. Green did a tremendous amount of work, including drafting of buildings, designs, modified those designs, and we presented that findings to the board in June of last year. The board decided at that time that it would be prudent to have a consultant reevaluate what we had done without having any input or even reading our report. 10 months later, McGill, who was the consultant that was hired by the board, came in with their report. And their report and recommendations mirrored our report and recommendations on all material matters. Subsequently, 4 months after that, bids were sent out for bid to have people come in and bid on doing the consulting work. Only two firms replied, McGill and Leo Green. I'm here to speak in favor of retaining Leo Green. As I said before, Mr. Green did everything that was possible, from evaluating the current system to making all the recommendations for what the new system should be. Since McGill really didn't come up with anything new, I don't see where there's any benefit to hiring that firm rather than Mr. Green's firm. McGill charged us $50,000. Mr. Green charged us nothing. Mr. Green has property here. He really has a vested interest in making sure that this is done. When I sent the letter in favor of Mr. Green over the McGill firm, Commissioner Freer expressed a little concern that the Green firm was going to retain some of the consultants that were used on the original sewer project. As we look at it now, nobody's happy with the sewer project as it was originally done, since it's buried, and that is really the problem that we're trying to rectify. But as the Sewer Advisory Committee chairman, we were never asked to identify why the sewer was made the way it was originally, so we never went there. When the question was raised by Mr. Freer, I asked Mr. Green if he had some idea why, and he says through his looking at it that there was a similar sewer committee in place prior to the original building of our sewer. That committee hired URS as the principal consultant and told URS that based on the possibility of hurricane damage, that they wanted the system to be buried rather than to be above ground. So URS went with that, what the directive was, to make a system that was, in the idea of that committee at that time, was the safer option. Instead of having it above ground, have it underground. They were more concerned about hurricanes than they were about having water come in because of storm surge. Hindsight's 20/20, but back when they built the sewer system, that's what the people believed, and that's what URS did. So the consultants or the subcontractors that worked on that, Dixon Associates, all they did was they were given an assignment after being told, we're going to build this underground, and they followed what their assignment was. They built it underground. And it's interesting because as part of the Sewer Advisory Committee, after Mr. Green did his drawings, one of the things that was suggested, because we have, I don't want to bore you with the whole thing, but we have our tanks are buried. And if the tanks should fail, there's no way you can get a new tank back in, because all you have is a stairwell. So you can get the bad tank out by cutting it up and taking it out in pieces, but we have no way to get it in. So to fix that, we're going to put a 8-foot square, 10-foot square, whatever it is, hole in the ground, cover that with impervious doors, and that way, if something bad happens, you can open the hatch, take out the bad one, put in a new one, and go on. But by cutting into the existing work, we had to get an engineer to tell us if it would be able to sustain the proposed buildings on that piece of land. And the company that we used, which was hired by the town, no input from me, no input from the committee, was Dixon and Associates. And Dixon and Associates signed a contract for $6,500 to perform that analysis. And when everything was said and done, they did it for $2,700. So Mr. Green feels, and I think if you look at it realistically, that there's a benefit in using the people who worked on the original, because they already know what's there. They worked on it, they have the plans, and there'll be a savings in cost because they don't have to, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can move forward with personal knowledge of what's there already. So, board, I'm in favor of Mr. Green. It's open to discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hewitt, you're going to talk with us about beach monitoring?
Yes, sir. We've got Fran Way from Applied Technology and Management, our coastal consultant, here tonight to give a synopsis of the annual beach monitoring report.
Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Fran Way. I'm a coastal engineer with Applied Technology Management. We've been working with the town since about 2004 or so on beach management activities. change, look at shoreline change. We've been doing this annually since 2001. That obviously it helps with planning and looking at where, nourishment might be needed, erosion, that sort of thing. It also helps with FEMA eligibility. And FEMA, helped with Matthew, it's helped with Irene, it's helped with Hurricane Hannah. This is one image from the Holden Beach on the east end in the 90s. And you can see there's significant erosion around here. And that was really, there were some homes lost in the 90s, and the beach really was in really bad shape in the 90s. Since about 2001, the Corps, the Army Corps of Engineers, they had a couple nourishments to help out, and then the town really kind of picked up its beach management activities. This is kind of the precipitator, where it just really was homes out on the beach, in the water, just being lost and abandoned. Hurricane season, we'll just go over quickly. This is kind of, it's an annual monitoring, but it's almost about like late spring to late spring. That's our year. So we're going to talk about last year's hurricane season. And obviously the big one was Hurricane Matthew. And you can see it kind of came up here. And it was a relatively busy season. There were a few storms that hit this area, but none of them were too strong, except obviously Matthew. Matthew did quite a bit of damage. For Hurricane Matthew, FEMA was involved, and we worked with the town worked with FEMA as they had before. The dune system got hit pretty hard. The dune vegetation lost about 40 acres of dune. But on one hand, the dune is relatively sacrificial, where it's a storm buffer. It acted as a storm buffer to kind of prevent damage to infrastructure and houses and things. But so the dune, this is a post-Matthew area, and that's a pre-Matthew area. We kind of have this color where you can see that the dune vegetation is lost. Volume-wise, the entire beach lost about 300,000 cubic yards of material. Between the quote-unquote engineered beach, and that's where FEMA will only reimburse you for the engineered portions of the beach, and that's where we put nourishment sand down. It was about 131,000 cubic yards that we could claim, and that FEMA helped us out with. So, Matthew did some damage. Besides that, luckily actually, the Central Reach Nourishment Project occurred just a couple months after Hurricane Matthew. And it was much needed, and the town did a great job of kind of keeping everyone up to date on the progress. And the POA has a great website related to the Central Reach Project, so I won't get into it that much. But it was a really successful project using an offshore borrow source. And we was down at the beach today. It looks great. The sand's very good, very compatible, and it's holding in there so far. We're going to keep our fingers crossed and the firma and things like that. It didn't really whack it too hard. The other project that happened this past year was the Lackawanna Inlet Crossing project. So that was that material that the Corps worked with, and the town worked with the Corps to maximize that material place. So the Central Reach project ended here, and then the Lackawanna Inlet Crossing project put material on the east end. And so it was a great year for nourishment material on the beach. We're about almost 1.5 million cubic yards of material was placed on the beach. And usually Holden Beach loses maybe about 100,000 to 150,000 cubic yards of material a year. So you're putting out 1.5 million, that's anywhere from 10 to 15 years worth of sand. And now obviously there's a Hurricane Matthew that can come through and do a little more damage, but historical average, we're putting out 10 to 15 years worth of sand. For our volume analysis, we look at, basically we start at the dune, and we go out to about 12 feet deep in the ocean. But then we also look in kind of the upper beach, we go 5 feet deep. We look at it a couple different ways. But, this is kind of this is where all the sand is, most of the sand is moving 12 feet deep and shallower. Volume change. You can see over here, this is the figure, this is all the material that we placed from the Central Reach and East End. The West End still showed some erosion, that's related to Matthew, but the sediment transport will move that way, so this sand will begin spreading out a assume next year, we're gonna see some benefits over here. The west end is also, the dune system is quite wide over here, up to 600 feet wide. So they've got a pretty substantial buffer already. Unit fill-wise, we're putting anywhere between like 50 and 70 cubic yards of material per linear foot. And then you can see down here, the total volume that they calculated was 1.48 million cubic yards of material. So just a little under that 1.5 million I was talking about, which is good because obviously the material that we put about 1.3 million for the central reach, and they put about 120,000 for the East End project. So we can account for all that material, and actually we've got a little bit more. And that could be from just a shoal attachment on the East End, or some other, obviously it's not a closed system. The mean high water shoreline, as you imagine, it looks very similar to that, where we just got a huge amount of accretion where the mean high water shoreline went between 150 and almost 200 feet seaward. We need to advance that mean high water shoreline. There's still some minor erosion over here, but again, this is that big wide dune system, and it will get benefited here in a few years or even 1 year. From 2000 to 2017, just historically, and this is again where the beach management activities kind of stepped up. You can see that over here we just have the historical mean high water change over the last 17 years, and the shoreline is about 200 feet seaward of when it was back in 2000, 17 years ago. So it's a very successful beach management program that the town's been working on here. And if back with compared to background erosion, Holden Beach is kind of mild to moderate erosion, and so the activities here have proved beneficial and cost effective. Okay, this is an image of the Central Reach Project bar area. So the rather offshore Holden Beach, there's not a whole lot of sand. There's not like a Jaybird Shoals or something like Cape Fear Shoals. But it took a while to find a good suitable source of sand. But there are other beaches like North Myrtle Beach that have kind of they're in the same kind of situation where you can find sand. It's just a little more difficult. You've got to do shallow cuts. This is the bar area, and you can see the bar area. They basically dredged about like 2 to 4 feet of sand in this entire area. Now this area was the area ideally we wanted to use this for 2 nourishment projects and kind of cut down here and let the first project was going to use this half, and then a future project would use this half. Well, we ran into a few spots where the material, they either hit some rocks, or actually there was, some areas where isolated pockets of material that they just didn't want to get put on the beach. And so they did move over here into this area that we wanted to save for later. But in general, there still is, about 600 to 700,000 cubic yards of sand available in this bar area, but there's not 1.3 billion. But 600 to 700,000 is still a good nourishment. But we do recommend long-range planning to go out here and kind of continue to look for additional sources of sand. Back a few years ago, when it came out to discuss these results, we had about 4 priority bar areas that we looked at, and this was the preferred one. But there were some areas where the material could be suitable and could work for future nourishments. So ongoing Holden Beach activities, beach management activities. Just what we were talking about, the Central Reach Planning bar area, we recommend try to go back and revisit that and look at, continue to look for additional sources of offshore sand. The static vegetation line / development line, that was instituted because this was such a large nourishment, and the town, David, we have been in contact with Department of Coastal Management, DCM, about getting the static vegetation line revoked or getting it pulled back via the development line, which is allows a little more flexibility for the town. And then some permit extensions. We just have to make sure every time we do these, we have the Corps permit, the Army Corps of Engineers permits, as well as the state DCM permits. And we just want those permit extensions they all expire at a certain date. And then we'll work with DCM to kind of get them running in parallel with the Corps extensions. And just make sure that we have an active permit on file. And that's especially important for responding to hurricanes and other erosional emergencies. The other ongoing project is the Terminal Groin project. That's kind of, the Corps is still kind of working that one. They're not moving very quickly. Besides the Terminal Groin project, but that final environmental impact statement should be out here in the next few months. Then obviously we have the shallow draft inlets program. The town and the state have been much better and much more involved in the shallow draft inlets now that the Corps is kind of stepping away and the Corps has a lot less funding dedicated to those projects. And then we'll continue with the annual monitoring, data collection, and reporting. And then, yes, just the federal projects that we talked about. And that's it for my talk.
Questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is as of 6 months ago, basically, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The survey data was from 6 months ago, but we did include some, the activity, the Burden project which occurred this summer and some of the other projects.
Okay. Any quick evaluation of right now since I mean, we didn't get hit by hurricane, but there was a lot of activity out in the Atlantic.
Yes, we haven't done any survey data. Every time, Irma or something hits, I'll talk with David and Christy and just see what kind of level of response is required. And we haven't done any, formal measurements or anything.
Okay. And I have a question regarding the static vegetation line and development line. Is there any plan in place?
Until we see a defined benefit for capturing or replacing the static vegetation line with a development line, that has not become apparent to us yet what the benefit of doing that would be.
So I'm assuming we're evaluating that to see if there is a benefit?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
I have a question about the borrow area. You took 2 to 4, they took 2 to 4 feet down.
Yes.
Will that fill in naturally over time?
This one probably not. It's 2 to 3 miles offshore, and it's in about 35 feet of water. And when you're out there, the sand just doesn't move around a lot.
Okay.
And even so, there is that small depression, but and there are some bar areas that can fill in, even in that same kind of area, in similar circumstances. But this one probably not. And like the North Myrtle Beach one doesn't really refill. So.
Yeah, I remember reading that in the report. So it sounds like for us to embark on another, if we ever do another central reach of that magnitude, we'd have to
Yes.
find a new borrow site. I mean, that's what's in the report.
Yes.
Is there, can you share with us the level of effort and cost to find another borrow site that would be equivalent to what we had for the central reach?
I can comment on the cost, the level of effort. Fran can talk about the things that have to be done. I mean, you have to do hydrographic subsurface surveys to find out if there's sand out there. I would estimate that the location testing of this particular site was in the neighborhood of $100,000.
I guess I was asking about to find another suitable site.
Well, that's what this one, and I can only premise on what it took to find this site.
I would agree
Okay.
with that estimate, and we do have a good amount of information already built up. And then this bar area had, the town of Oak Island has expressed interest in using this bar area, and there's really nothing we can do to prevent them from doing that. And just recently, they're putting an artificial reef out there that's about a little over 1,000 feet away from this one, which is not good. So, you know, there's some, but this is still permitted, and the 2002 core nourishment that really kind of provided the backbone of the nourishment back in 2002 was about 525,000 cubic yards, which is a big nourishment. Obviously, it's not as, the 1.3, the Central Reach project was much bigger, but you know, 600,000 cubic yards is that's still a pretty sizable nourishment. But given that the town of Oak Island is already talking about trying to use that remaining material, and there's some pressure, or we're just dealing with some other factors.
So are there other sites that we are aware of, or you're aware of, that we could pursue in the future?
Yes, we back it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. We established 4 kind of priority areas that and then we kind of went with this one as it did seem the best. But we would have to go back, and especially now that we have this one and we see what, you know, how it looks and everything on the beach, we can go back and reevaluate those other 3 areas.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you for your hard work
Yep, thank you.
and all the years of service.
Thank you.
Chief Wally Lane, police report.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to report that crime on the island so far is fairly calm. Don't let your guard down. We are on the cusp of break-in season, so we need to remain vigilant and look out for each other. And if you see something that doesn't look right, please let us know. So far, so good. On the tropics, also. Kind of sort of looks like it's calming down. Hope it stays that way for the rest of the hurricane season. Boo at the beach. Is Friday night from 5:30 to 7:30. I know there's a slight conflict because it's also candidates night. I don't think the candidates night starts till 7 though, and Boo goes from 5:30 to 7:30. So come to Boo first, and then come to candidates night and vote for the police. Vote for the police. This is their 3rd year. We've won the first 2. We'd like to get 1 more under our belt, and then we're going to retire and help the other folk. So come vote for the police. This will be the best ever. I promise. I promise. I told Christy, 3-ring circus, lions and tigers and bears are mine. Anyway, all that being said, glad to answer any questions.
I have a question, Chief.
Yes.
Now that the park ranger program has, not going on anymore,
Yeah.
have you resumed, or what's the schedule of beach patrol? Because I've had several people tell me that it's like a dog park out on the beach.
Well, I'm not sure what,
So I guess the first question, are we back to normal patrol on the beach the weekends from the police, or
yes.
what is that?
Yeah,
what does that
but,
entail?
the dogs on the beach after the season
Yeah, after,
are
off the
allowed
leash,
as
obviously.
long as they're on the leash.
Yeah, it's not, they're off the leash.
If we don't get a call and we're not out there, we don't know that.
Oh, I understand. So,
And there are not enough of us to be out there all the time. So if that's the situation, then somebody needs to give us a call and we can certainly deal with it.
but you are patrolling now on weekends on the beach?
Every day, we go down the beach more than once a day.
Your presence, will, that's, when you call, they're already got the dog off, and you know the situation.
I do.
Okay.
I promise I do.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions or comments of the chief? Thank you, sir, for all you and
Yes,
your
sir.
officers do. We're on number 9 on the agenda. Commissioner Freer.
Oh, yes. I'd mentioned it last meeting, and Commissioner Royal wasn't here, but just want to bring attention to the calendar. The next meeting is the third Tuesday, is 2 days before Thanksgiving holiday. I have a problem with that. I'm sure there's other people, or they may have a problem, but I'd propose that we change that meeting date to the Tuesday before, which is November 14th.
I second that motion.
Any discussion?
I'd like to point out that I've got a conflict that day. Matter of fact, that entire week except for Friday, I've got conferences that were previously scheduled some time back, and while the day of the 14th is doable, it's going to be a mighty long day.
Well, I'll chime in. I begged the commissioners not to change the meeting date the way it was changed whenever we started this 2-year tenure. I had to rearrange many of my meetings to accommodate, and now we're about to change again to a date that conflicts with my schedule. Y'all can meet if you like, but I won't be here. Unless there's something major going on, I don't know why you don't just cancel it.
Oh, that's a,
Or leave it unscheduled and nothing comes up.
yeah, I don't expect anything major to come up. It's an option.
Can I pile on again, come back around for seconds? The major thing that the board is going to be considering is the sewer contract for whoever, I'm assuming some firm will be chosen. And that contract, we wouldn't be able to get one ready to be entertained at a meeting a week ahead of the normal meeting. I'm skeptical that we could get one together for the regular November meeting, but certainly I would hesitate to sign up that we could have that contract given its robustness, and we want to make sure we get it right, make sure the attorney has a chance to come behind us and sharpshoot it before we present it. So that would be the major thing.
So in that light, would a week later, would you be able to get the contract? Or we could all
Have a
just
special meeting.
have a special meeting for that?
As needed, or, I mean, it could be the December meeting to do that.
Okay.
Or, given the importance of that issue,
And the timely.
I'd propose a special meeting could be held just for that.
If we're able to get it done.
Right, okay.
As could any
Sure.
item that comes up be done in a special meeting.
Okay.
Well, it sounds to me that changing the date would cause undue conflicts. And what I've heard sounds like we should stay with the date, and if we need, if we have action to take, or call a special meeting for the contract. That's the main thing we're hearing is in
Just
the
cancel a
future.
meeting?
That's just my opinion for
Yeah,
discussion.
I like the idea of just canceling the meeting. If we have urgent business, then to call a special meeting. I'm not gonna be able to attend on the third Tuesday.
Mr. Mayor, is a cancellation of that cause any other issues?
Not for me.
You want to change the,
Yeah, I'll amend my motion, and I motion that we cancel the November meeting.
Okay, so you withdraw your first motion?
Yes, sir.
I approve that.
And you
I
approve
vote
the
yes.
withdrawal. Now you want to make another motion, and that motion
Is
is
to cancel
the November
the
meeting.
November
Is there
meeting.
a second
I
meeting.
second that.
Any discussion on that?
We can always call a special meeting if
Exactly.
things emerge
Yes.
in the meantime.
Absolutely.
You ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Audience understand there will not be a regularly scheduled meeting for November. If a meeting is necessary, it will be called for a special purpose. Okay? Number 10, Mr. Clemens.
How you doing? I guess I don't have to probably bail off into a lot of background information tonight since Mike Sullivan done a pretty good job of covering all that for me, so kudos to him. Here tonight to ask you again to consider or make a decision on a engineering firm to actually get us started on our sewer system upgrades. I know you can remember from our last meeting that we had solicited proposals from qualified engineering firms, and we actually had two, and those two being Green Engineering and McGill and Associates. I give that information to you the last time, and I think Ashley Roll, Commissioner Roll, was absent, and y'all felt like you'd love to have his presence before you made that decision. Just asking you tonight to see if you can make one where we can proceed.
I have a question. I'm accustomed to when you have two or more qualified companies that you're about to engage in a business agreement that I'm accustomed to having sealed bids submitted, and so you've got qualified bidders, and then you can make a determination based on cost.
Well,
Is there,
No.
it's my understanding that the only thing we're actually,
well, and I'll
looking
preface
at
that
is-
by
is-
saying
is-
that's in the private business
yeah,
world.
is actually
So-
qualifications that don't have anything to do with our actual design that we actually gonna carry forward through. You're just actually selecting an engineer. Anything to do with price, any plans or anything that we decide to do after this will have to come before y'all anyway.
Madam Attorney?
Yeah, this is North Carolina law for request for qualifications for engineering services is not to include price. You're supposed to select the engineer based on the qualifications that you specified you needed in your request. You're supposed to weigh the responses to the questions and information that you requested and base your decision solely on the qualifications. This is a part of the federal law, the Minnie Brooks Act, and it's also in North Carolina law as well.
Okay, is that something that municipalities have to comply with that private business doesn't?
Yes.
Okay, you answered my question, thank you.
I learned something on this too, Ashley. I didn't,
All right.
didn't know it either at the time.
The actual engagement of the firm will be subject to a contract, though. That's what I was referring to earlier.
So,
It's just unfortunate to me that competitive bidding isn't a part of that process. I understand it's a law, but
It is for the contract itself. This is for the person to tell the town how the contract should be, what the specifications should be in order to accomplish the needed results. That will be subject to competitive bidding. Those will be sealed bids. And then this board will determine who will award that contract to based on the most responsible bidder. So that will be the cost of the project.
Yeah,
Well- well,
that's
the-
the construction side of it. What y'all are doing now is engineering services.
yeah, which is
Okay.
which is a work in itself, and it's going to cost some money. So I share your amazement with how the government works versus the private.
it is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of times those are design build, where the
Yeah.
engineer is also responsible for the construction aspect of it too. That's not what we're doing here, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
engineering service is what we're doing now.
Yes.
Right.
And one thing to remember is if, when he brings us the contract, we're not happy with the cost and the price, then he can get on the phone and go to someone else and get another cost and price.
Or if you don't like what's on his plan, you can tell him you don't like that and you want to change this, that, and the other, and he
Well-
can design whatever we'd have him design.
Well, that's a good point. It's really important, because there's a couple points, and I want to make some comments. Mr. Sullivan, we did speak, I spoke with Mr. Green, had a great conversation with Mr. Green, and first of all, the Citizen Advisory Committee did a great job. I was probably there at most of the meetings, listening. Very well done, very well thought out. It was perfect, but I also do not regret at all getting a second opinion. I mean, I love my doctor, but I still go get a second opinion from my doctor if I had something to have to take care of. But anyway, and Mr. Green addressed he gave me the history as well that you said that having the subcontractors, they were not the prime contractors. They were basically they were doing what they were contracted to do, which was a portion of that job, the electrical portion and the structural, those two subcontractors. And I agree, that as long as they weren't, they were subcontractors, they weren't, they didn't initiate the design, it's an advantage to have them, because the first thing you gotta do is, what's the as-is to determine how we're gonna get to the to-be. So I agree that's an advantage. And I also think a couple issues that I had as far as the 150 miles away versus local, and we could easily mitigate in the contract. Just make sure that there's no travel cost where we wouldn't incur a travel cost with the other highly qualified. They were both extremely qualified, so so I don't have any. So I think my questions were answered, and I have no other questions regarding Leo Green.
So what I heard was we are going to decide which company will provide the engineering services for the design and construction management services. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And beyond that, there is a bidding process for the actual construction?
Building, yes.
For building, okay. In that case, I move we select Green Engineering as that engineering services provider.
Is there a
I
second?
second.
I second it. Yep.
Discussion?
My only discussion would be, this was an example of a citizens committee that we wanted to work with that proved very, very, very good. We got the brain power of some really powerful citizens, a couple of engineers, a non-engineer. I was not questioning whether or not what they did was right or wrong. When Chris took me into the first underground, I drew exactly the same conclusions. That's what we ought to be. But you just happened to mention a doctor. 2 weeks ago, my doctor said I should cut my leg in half. and he was gonna sew me a new knee in. And I thought really hard of that. I used to be an OR tech. I said, you guys should cut my leg in half and put my knee, yeah. I said, is that really necessary? Oh, you gotta do it right away. I said to T.D. Decker, friend of ours here on the beach, anybody I could go to for a second opinion? He said, yeah, go to Duke. Went up to Duke University 10 days ago. They said, somebody told you to have a knee replacement? I said, yeah. He said, it's not necessary. So you're at the very beginning of this. We got a special training program now. We can build those legs up. You won't ever need the surgery. I'm really glad I took a second opinion. And we looked at this deal. We're looking at millions of dollars of spending. And I would not have ever gone and just signed up for somebody to do it because of one person said it. I said, I at least want a second opinion from another qualified firm. We got a very qualified firm, gave us exactly the same recommendation. So when I put them two together, it's probably the hardest decision I've ever had. But I drew the conclusion that, in fact, Green is probably going to do the better job for us. And I'd like to try them first in terms of getting this job done. I think they'll get it done fast for us, and they'll do well for it. They got two good subcontractors. So my view right now is Green would be the firm.
Any more discussion? Questions? Ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens, for all you do.
Yep, thank you.
We're on number 11, Mr. Evans from the building inspections and so forth.
I can't remember. It's a long time ago. Did the chief bring up who at the beach? Or after he gave his report?
After, I'll tell you.
It was after, okay. I'll wait. I did want to talk about one thing, though. They were talking about, I heard somebody mention the Beach Ranger program.
The what program?
Beach Ranger program,
Oh,
yeah. What we did notice in the trending from the reports was that after hours, because what we did was we did split some of our duties during the day. We had some scheduled in the morning and some scheduled in the evening. So we kind of split them up so we could see if there was a difference in patterns of what was being violated as far as the ordinance and what wasn't. And what we found was that later in the evening, they turned the dogs loose. So we were going to recommend as part of our package for next year that we consider having running two people on separate times during the day. Having a schedule in the morning and one in the afternoon. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. This is Mr. Fletcher Wright contacted the town. I don't know, I can't remember if he contacted David or if he contacted the planning department first, and he requested a refund for some lots that he had that were in the marsh. I believe that back when the town started charging for sewer allocations, that they basically charged everyone that was on the island that had a lot, based on the fact that I don't think that they wanted to leave anybody out who ever had the potential to build on a lot, because they would have to provide allocation for them, and if they didn't charge or didn't have them on the register, then it would be hard to get that allocation because we had to account for it. So I guess this is one that slipped through the cracks, but he contacted the planning department or David. I can't remember which way. I do know that it came from David's office to me, back to me to review. We looked at it. Mapping looked at it. I looked at it. Both CAMA officers, Rhonda and myself, looked at it. We looked at it from the zoning aspects of it, and we looked at it from the building code requirements and from the FEMA requirements. We required him to give us surveys and any additional information that we asked for verification. And basically what it amounted to was that lot 25 was in its entirety was in the marsh. Lot 24, which made it unbuildable. Lot 24 only had a small portion of land that pretty much, once you had added the 30-foot buffer and our regulations as far as minimum home size, it made it pretty much, well, made it unbuildable as well. Our recommendation was that he combine lots 24 and 25 and take the dry land portion, since he owned 23, off of 24 and add it to 23. What that did was make a lot that essentially became buildable and with a little bit more land to the left of it, if you're going towards the end of the way. So basically 24 and lots 25 were unbuildable, and now 23 has a little bit more land with it. And so he's asked for a refund for those sewer allocations for lots 24 and 25.
Is this the first time this has ever happened?
No, sir.
It's the first time it's happened with me. First time it's happened
So in
with me.
years, been quite a few years.
Yeah.
Is there a way to know when he became aware that this was no longer buildable? Obviously, he bought them thinking it was going to be buildable and must have decided at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume that, I don't know when he realized they were unbuildable. I didn't ask that question.
And when did you approve breaking a lot in half and joining it with another lot? How long ago was that?
He did the recombination, I want to say maybe 3 months, 4 months ago.
Just
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah. Yeah, it was no benefit for it to remain in that one lot. I mean, it was just never going to be used. Yeah.
But how much benefit and value would there be shifting that amount of land onto the other lot and making it a larger lot? Is it half again as big?
No, it was not. It was not. It was just a little portion of that land. It was almost non-existent once you took the 30-foot buffer away from it for the wetlands.
He might be able to get a swimming pool
Yeah.
on that extra piece added onto the existing house structure lot.
And when you were here last month, you said that you could go back 5 years?
Well,
And now you're saying you can go back 10?
Well, what I'm saying is when I was here last time, I don't know if I said you could go back 5 years, because I think we took it off the agenda.
Right.
No, it was in the,
Before,
Yeah,
it was in the package.
Yeah,
package.
we
And you said it was
quoted- We actually had a
$4,500.
hold of the wrong statute, and you couldn't refund it under that statute, as I understand from the attorney. We were actually using the tax statute, and that was not the proper statute. That's why we took it off the agenda, because the town attorney told me that I got it all wrong.
So to understand that we have refunded other lots in the past for a similar reason? Well, I think it's the right thing to do to refund it then. If we've done it in the past and seems to be
precedent.
I make a motion, we approve refunding the money for lots 24 and 25.
Is there a second?
second.
Discussion?
Can I add something in here? It just dawned on me that this is a refund that's of monies that's already been paid out, and I don't know if we billed him out for the 17-18 year and this bill that just went out. So would y'all be okay with amending that to include, if we did bill it, that I could scrub this year's, because otherwise I'm gonna be coming back to you
Consider it so amended.
with that again, if
I
you're so
agree.
inclined.
All right, the motion maker and the seconding party has agreed to the amendment. Everybody understand the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, discussion continues.
I'm good.
Hearing none, ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Boo at the beach. It is Friday night. I've kind of been a little bit of an impartial player in all this. I've been standing by and watching. I participated the first year. We had a really good showing. We had a lot of kids that came to the booth that I put on. I did not participate last year. I don't like losing, so I didn't participate last year. But I have listened and I've watched, and the only thing I can think of is the Calvary. And I've noticed that Christie has put together a lot of Indians. And every time I hear the chief talk about participating next year, I wonder if that's the same thing Custer said before he got to the battle. I just wonder. Anyway, show up for Boo at the Beach. You might be surprised.
I believe that's a gauntlet.
Well, he threw it down
This
to
free decor is a wonderful thing.
Yes, sir.
The only thing I would say in regards to what he just said is, remember, Red Cloud was the only Indian chief to ever defeat the U.S. Army.
Well, the problem is that Christie's a member of the Use the Hot Tribe. Molly's a member of the Not So Hot Tribe.
All right, Mr.
We're gonna have to call somebody to remove him from here.
Mr. Fletcher has to follow that.
Can I discuss this before I make the motion, or do I have to make a motion first?
You can talk about it until the chair says you're talking too much.
All right. So I want to talk just a second before I make a motion about beach vitex. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but this beach vitex is a very aggressive weed that was normal in Pacific area, got brought to the U.S., and now has been attacking beaches on the East Coast, starting from Florida, coming this direction. It's a rapidly growing beach invasive plant that dominates dune ecosystems, leading to a reduction in the prevalence of the native species, so it wipes out all the other plants. It could easily overwhelm the existing native plants, including sea oats and seagrass, which we have planted on our beach to protect our beach. The loggerhead turtle group sees it as a risk to the turtles not even being able to get to their normal nesting area, and if they do, that the root schemes will cover up a nest and not allow them to escape when they do hatch. So in view of the potential harm to our dune and the beach system, I believe the town, I'll make the motion, I move that the town be responsible for monitoring and eradicating the plant beach vitex from the dunes and the beach strand. Not the whole island, just the dunes and the beach strand, as soon as possible.
Don't we already do that?
We don't pay for it.
I searched for the ordinance and didn't find one.
Yeah, there is an ordinance on the books that does address.
It's 92 something.
It's just flipping. And I actually talked to Tim previously about this. It came out of a task force that was created. There was some funding for eradication of beach vitex, in part based on some studies out of South Carolina involving turtles, is my understanding. But there is section 92-40 we do have an ordinance that does provide for the town's removal of vitex with the assistance of several other agencies that are listed that are not intended to be exhaustive. So there is an ordinance on the books. I don't know if it meets your.
If it does, if the town's responsible, the town will do it.
It doesn't take the
No.
town. What it does is it, the way the ordinance is drafted is that it requires property owners who identify beach vitex on their property to eradicate it from their property pursuant to acceptable means of removal and disposal. The town is charged with the responsibility of collection of it once it is removed. Mr. Evans may have more comment on the
funding issue.
efforts and changes to chemical sprays and things that are now maybe more effective than they were when this ordinance was adopted some time ago.
Sorry, if you're gonna be our resident expert,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Remember, whatever Christie's doing, vote for that, do it to beach. Beach vitex, okay, in 2011, well, it goes all the way back. It goes back to 1955, but we won't go back that far, when it was the first identified in North Korea. But it was actually put on the beaches during Hugo. It spread because it's an invasive plant. There was funding available to the United States Fish and Wildlife. They funded it, I think, between 2004 and 2011. So there was a task force formed. The studies and everything were originally done at Clemson and NC State. And basically, NC State's the one that brought it in during Hugo. Clemson was one of the ones that started working on trying to figure out how to eradicate it. There was a task force. We've met with the task force twice. We've driven them from one end of the beach to the other. We identified every lot that we could find. In 2011, it had beach vitex. They were all sent letters. They agreed to allow the task force to come on to do treatments. They treated it twice. As far as we can tell, every single lot still has beach vitex. As far as I know from talking to a Corps person, there's no one calling us back from the beach vitex task force. We've been trying for weeks, and we can't get back in touch with them. They haven't called us back, but I did get a hold of someone who was involved in the program early on and said that the task force, that there's no more money involved. Our ordinance stipulates that if it's identified on the property, then the property owner has to remove it. And
What does remove mean?
well,
Pull
they
it up
can
by the roots?
eradicate it, get rid of it. Well, it's actually recommended that you don't pull it up.
That's what I was asking.
In their pamphlet, but the gentleman that I talked to the other day said that that was one of the best methods, was to wait till the foliage fell off of it and tie a truck to it and pull it up. That's what he said, but he was working for the Corps, which is against everything I've read. But what I have done is I've done a lot of research, and what I found out was that when they first started, certain herbicides that they were using, I think that their method of getting rid of it was based on the fact that they were trying to protect native species as much as possible. So it basically procured where you simply damage the plant and then apply some sort of herbicide to it. They had great success with one type in the early on, but as I can tell you, 2 treatments, 3 treatments, and it's still everywhere it was already at. I talked to one other town who actually has their own pamphlet on how to get rid of it. They recommend that you can try it the way it was originally done, using 41% glyphosate, which has a suffocant in it. And if that don't work, if you want to, you can spray it, but you got to remember that it will kill whatever else it touches out there, because glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. So the method of getting rid of it hasn't changed. That was one of their original recommendations, was that you spray it if you know what I mean, as a last resort, but you skin it and put glyphosate or another herbicide on it in multiple treatments to get rid of it. And then once it's dead, you pull it up. But like I said, I'm not sure the program, I haven't seen anywhere. I've seen where they touted that they were having success, but I've not seen anything where it says it's ever been successful. You know what I mean, of getting rid of it. But we still have it. The only place that is dead is in a big flower pot planter that was out front of a house where somebody actually sprayed it every bit and killed it. And I can't remember, did we do that, Chris? Did we have you? But someone sprayed that entire planter, and it was a whole planter full of it. When I say planter, it was bigger than twice those table lengths and twice as wide. And they sprayed the whole thing, and it did kill it every bit.
Do we currently fund any eradication?
The
Since
only
we
one
don't know if it's funded somewhere else?
The only one that we would fund or would be if it's on a public facility, and I'm not aware of any of those.
Okay. But not, I think the motion was on the beach.
And the dunes.
And the dunes.
Yeah.
I got some concerns about on the dunes, because the toe of the frontal dune is private property. And going on private property spraying herbicides is probably problematic. It's probably.
Particularly
Well,
anything beyond the toe of the private toe of the frontal dune would be private property.
And remember, our original program was basically, if we found it, we got the property owners to notify the task force, who they then gave permission, had to get permission from them to go on and treat it on their own properties. So that's how it worked before. It wasn't the town going out there, it was the actual property owners giving permission to the task force to treat it.
So it could be just a lack of focus on this issue, right? The homeowners, you know.
There's no money in that grant program. The program coordinator isn't responding to our requests for feedback whenever we identify the cases. And we've got about 20 cases identified.
Yeah.
And that's the way that ordinance is scoped. It's scoped that the town is a facilitator with the responsibility for compliance vested in an external agency, providing the funding and the mechanism for it. It's not the best organizational structure to get something done.
Adopted in March of 2006, and though I have not reviewed the minutes from when it was adopted, I would suspect that having an ordinance on the book was probably a prerequisite to being able to receive the funding.
What's the consequences if you don't?
Penalties are in accordance with the general penalties under the town code. It's criminal if you violate it. It's civil fine possibility. There's a violation of up to $25 for each violation. I mean, it's the general.
But I understand, you know, things have changed.
Yeah.
How much money did we just spend on, you know, sea oats and vegetation in the Central Reach?
A pile.
Yeah. That's where I'm coming from. We need to protect our investment.
Well, what I'm hearing is the only way to treat it is you'd likely kill the sea oats and anything else with it if it's Roundup.
Well, it hasn't gotten to the sea oats that we planted yet, I don't think. It's on
Okay.
people's private property.
Well, wouldn't it require an easement before we could go in and do something on private property, just like we did with Central Reach?
I'm going to give you the lawyer-like answer. I would say it depends. Specifically, this ordinance declares it a public nuisance, so the town under police power does have the ability under certain circumstances to abate nuisances, but I wouldn't want to do it under this ordinance. If this is a priority for the board, then I would suggest that we draft or amend the ordinance to better protect the town taking any eradication.
It may be, and I'm doing this on the fly, it may be something as simple as recrafting that ordinance to declare it a public nuisance, and when it's found, the property owner is given notice of violation and told to get rid of it, and the onus would be on the property owner to get rid of it, to find a qualified, spray guy to do that.
But this is something they didn't have anything to do with coming onto our beach, right?
Well, it was done as landscaping.
Yeah, it was done as erosion control.
These people didn't do it.
I
It
don't
was done
know.
in Florida, and it's growing north now. I don't think we had anybody here plant this on the beach.
It was actually planted during Hugo down near Pauley's Plantation is when it was brought in. Originally, it was put in Florida like in 55, but it didn't quite do as well down there. It requires a cold season to really
That's
happen.
off in the wintertime.
Yeah, so it was actually brought in after Hugo because they ran out of plantings after Hugo, and they brought it in as erosion control.
Do you think a possible first step would be, you know, an education about if you identify this plant, how you can eradicate it?
You need to be careful. It has a plant. There is a native plant out there that looks a lot like it.
Sure it is.
As a matter of fact, Rhonda walked around with it for an hour before I said, "Rhonda, that's the wrong plant." So.
Okay.
So do we have any idea how much it would cost for the treatment of these 20 units that we know of?
We could get estimates. I do not know that. We'd have to get some feedback from some landscape.
Because my feeling is this is important enough for the island and for our beach and our dune system that the town should be responsible for paying for it. And most of our owners on the beach don't live here. They're renting the houses. They're not going to see it, so we just back and forth. I can't, for 20 houses, I can't imagine this is a huge amount.
Well, I don't know. It's probably not going to be a one-time thing. I mean, as we've seen, it's going to be a recurring issue. But we can put some feelers out to see what type of programmatic the impact might be.
And the board could see about funding that.
I think the attorney has something she wanted to say.
Just about the idea of passing that cost to the town. I mean, I think some of that depends on where you're removing it, but the ordinance that is in place now doesn't anticipate the town paying for the removal.
Understand that.
The burden is on the property.
Understand that.
I think that the question that would exist today, speaking with Mr. Evans, is what's an acceptable means of removal? And that's what this ordinance is focused on. So I think, I wasn't certain what the subject of the item was on the agenda tonight because there wasn't any supporting material, but I would be happy to work with town staff to try to identify something that protects the town legally, but also addresses your concern of this potential kudzu of the beach taking over.
And of the potential for changing that ordinance, the town would in fact fund that the board would fund that eradication rather than, yeah. Can we do that? And
I think it's time now to seek a second, because we've beat it around. If you want to continue to talk about it, let's get a second and then move the question.
Could you repeat the,
well, the motion was move that the town be responsible for monitoring and eradicating the plant beach vitex from the dunes and beach strand.
are you wanting to amend that to ask the town to, as the attorney suggested, to look into updating and understanding and
What do we
the
need, what do we
town
need for that in a
manager-
motion to?
Town manager also
You actually
estimate
don't need to.
the cost?
Just a consensus of the board that you want the town staff and your attorney to look at a beach vitex ordinance that would perhaps allow for the removal on private property with or without the cooperation of property owners.
Just withdraw your motion
It
and
needs to be
let
vetted.
staff work on it.
Yeah.
Well,
So, yeah.
I would not share that consensus. I mean, I just heard that we have an ordinance, we may need to clean up the words about it being declared a nuisance. But I see too many problems with what could go wrong with us funding that, because then it becomes a responsibility of the town, and any damages that are incurred. If it was on my property, I know I would be upset if my ornamental bushes or whatever else got damaged. I mean, there's just too much there.
Okay, let's get back, get our order
I
here.
think I
So,
withdraw my
well-
motion.
Okay, he wants to withdraw his motion, so you want to make another motion or anything?
Well, I move, I heard our council advise that we clean up the wording on, or that would be an option for us to declare it a nuisance.
It currently in your ordinance, it is declared to be a public nuisance, but it puts the burden of removal on the property
Okay.
owner to work with the task force that apparently may no longer be funded or operational to develop a program. This task force was supposed to develop a program to remove and eradicate beach vitex, and it does not appear that they did that. But this ordinance is based on the town notices, produces notice of a violation, lets people know that they've got beach vitex on their property, and then the property owner is supposed to take steps. And the town's role, as stated in the ordinance, is that they're supposed to collect the beach vitex and dispose of it properly once it's removed from the property. I mean, you have it in place now not to accomplish what you want to do, which is the town to go on to private
Or
Can
give
I
the
ask-
town permission to do it, to work with the contractor.
There's a history.
May I ask if there's a consensus of the commissioners that we ask the staff to bring back a recommendation after their review?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
Is
so.
that, everybody happy with that?
Yes, as long as we're not proposing that the town pay for
We're
it.
not.
Right.
We're not.
Madam Attorney, do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk,
Yes, sir.
are we ready to move on?
One final comment.
Yes.
It sounds like a task force was supposed to take place and it's no longer, so what was, I think we have to understand what ball was dropped and how the
Well-
town has to pick up.
Well, it was,
Okay, that's-
I think it was actually in the other way around. I think the task force was formed, the money was gotten, and then they went to beaches and encouraged them to incorporate these ordinances
Okay.
so that they could cooperate.
I think the town did all it could do at the point in time.
Okay, great. Thanks.
But just before you do that, you should know that the state ordinance now is that it's illegal to transport it or sell it.
But it's still here.
And you gotta remember that if you collect it, it's hard to kill, and then it goes to the landfill.
So the staff's going to come back with a recommendation.
Yeah.
Right, burn it. Good enough.
All right, number 13, Clerk Locklear. No, not Locklear. Lochner.
That's okay. Everybody does it.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Again, we have another cell tower lease that's come up. Our current one is not, our current contract is not up until 2020, but they are proposing to pay less money. You can see the 3 agreements that they've proposed. If you guys would like to change what we currently have before 2020, essentially, that's in front of you.
So is this contract binding until 2020?
I will have to go back and pull the original contract, but the terms that go till 2020. So I'd have to go back and look and see, but I don't have the original in front of me.
Didn't they come back last year?
It was
with
It was
this?
a different.
different
Each
carrier.
one does it, like every other year, they try to come back and pay
Okay.
less money for renting the water tank.
Less money, longer term. And I'd recommend to the board, with technology being so dynamic, that we wait another year before entertaining
They don't
anything.
have anywhere else to go.
Well, they could throw up a tower across the way pretty quickly, but yeah. Yeah. I'm all right with that. Because we had no action on the last.
That's correct.
Okay. I think that was good.
Thank you, Ms. Lochner.
Miss Redwine Lochner. Are we through with that item?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Number 14, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir.
Speed reducing devices.
At the last board meeting, the board asked me to gather some information relative to the request to install speed bumps on Shell Drive. We contacted our insurance provider, and while there's no specific exclusion for general liability claims caused by speed bumps on town streets, there are examples of claims and payouts that the league has made relating to speed bumps, and several that are pending. We got information from the 2 transportation planning organizations to our north and south. I've included that compendium of information for your information. Mark Howeller down in Georgetown is basically, he just came out and said that he doesn't like speed bumps. And that's neither here nor there to what your consideration might be. We did get information from the Cape Fear Council of Governments, who is the regional planning element for transportation in Brunswick County, and gave us a whole bunch of information. In my opinion, their speed bumps is one of a number of types of traffic calming devices, and at the very minimum, you should probably think in terms of what types of criteria that should be instituted before choosing to go down one of the several options that you have in front of you.
I have a comment. I have a question, David. Is all this it's a lot of information, and thank you very much. Is this information available online?
Did we put this on?
to everyone?
We put it on.
Okay, great. Because there's a lot of information about local and a lot of studies being done about speed bumps that I think very pertinent. I'd also comment that I went down there last time, and there's a dead-end sign, and then a couple streets down, there's a no turnaround sign. I'd propose that we include a no turnaround sign. Would be an easy, see if it alleviated the issue on that street.
On Shell Drive, put a no turnaround
Correct.
sign?
Yep.
Where are you talking about putting it up at?
As close to Ocean Boulevard as possible. Because you know the issue, right? That they explained. People come into the West End, they see the gate, and they take the first turn, they take that turn, and then they go down to the end of the street where there is not a, turnaround, and they pull in someone's driveway, and then they speed out.
I don't know, I mean, it's a public street, and telling someone that they can not go down the street, I don't know if that's a,
Well, we have a sign, I don't know what streets, a couple streets before that, that does say no turnaround, and we don't have the luxury of having a cul-de-sac where you don't have to go in on someone else's driveway to turn around. So it's not.
I'll defer to Chris.
But they have dead end.
It says that.
The signs on the main drag, those signs before you get to the gate down there were actually approved by the DOT engineers and were laid out, as well as the turnaround at the gate. Those are all approved by the DOT.
Yeah.
So that they can have that gate.
And that, yeah, I went down there to check it out, and the sign, if you go up, and it's a pretty informative sign, but you have to sit there and read it. There is a way to turn around, but I think most people see the gate, I can't get through that gate, take that right, and that was the complaint. So, there is a street, I'll find it, Chris, I'm sure you know, there is no turnaround on
Well, I
a,
believe you, but I just think, dead end, I mean, really, I don't think you could stop somebody turning around the driveway. I mean, I'm trying to be smart.
You're in-
and
I don't know why you have it on the other one, but we have we don't have provision for people to turn around on our dead-end streets, right? It's just the way it is. Right. But I consider this as kind of unusual circumstance, right? Because we don't have a street that, they see a gate, you can't continue down Ocean Boulevard, and people use it. That's how it's being used.
I see a big issue is that there is a sign at the gate,
Down the street.
but it's not clear enough. There's plenty of room to turn around at the gate. They've done a nice job of saying, pull to the left and the room to back in, turn around and go back. But people don't see that. And if there's a way to signage to say the turnaround is to the left of the gate, maybe some way to signage to take the relief off of that one street, because that's pretty harsh on that street.
Yeah.
The one guy's put 65 bags of gravel back in his driveway because people speed off, throwing the gravel all over his yard. He happens to be the last house on the street.
Yeah.
If that's what you feel like is the solution, I don't have any problem posting on the street.
I mean, hopefully it will work. I mean, I don't agree with setting a precedent. Everybody will want speed bumps or some other variation because there are a lot of kids and, for the same reason. But I think that's a fairly unique situation where we could try to resolve it by signage, so people know that there is not a regular, most people that don't live here don't know that there's not a circle at the end of their streets, that you can turn around.
Should we consider the staff recommending something to us?
Sure.
In lieu of these speed-reducing devices?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
You okay with that? I think we have a consensus on that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Staff, the commissioners are asking you to come up with a suggestion and solution in regards to this matter.
That
Correct.
doesn't include speed-reducing devices.
It does not include
Correct.
speed-reducing devices.
Correct.
Town managers report, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief tonight. Just three major items. First of all, in keeping with the monthly feedback on our flood map status, last month I had reported that we were supposed to get a letter of final determination on the new flood maps, and then it would be 6 months before they came effective. I don't have a letter of final determination yet. And it's October. We're supposed to get it in September. It dawned on me when we were putting the comments together, or I was putting the comments together for tonight, that I had inadvertently left the budget to actual report off of the agenda, and I'll just go through it briefly, the summary slide that you have seen.
Have we asked why we haven't received?
I've got a phone call in.
Okay.
The line item budget, of course, is posted to the website. It has been there since the beginning of the month. What I wanted to show you here, in the general fund, as happens always at this time of year, we're deficit spending. We're in the rears about 11%. Likewise, in the water and sewer fund, we're down about a point there. On the flip side of the coin, due to the cyclical nature of our seasonal rentals, we're to the good of some $1.7 million. That is, of course, including some of the FEMA bloat that I referred to last month. Some of our reimbursements, of course, crossed fiscal years. And then, of course, the canal dredging program hasn't incurred any expenses at all and has brought the entirety of their accrued funds across into the new fiscal year.
In the B part, aren't most of our expenses also during the same period?
Our expenses in B part are going to be the payment of the Central Reach project, which is not due in the first quarter.
Okay.
Highlights from those slides is that the negative balances in the general fund and the water fund highlight the importance of having adequate fund balance. That 11% that we're in the red, you know, our fund balance is about 50%. That is a great example of why we have fund balance to pay the normal operating expenses until we get the big money in the tax season, which has just started. So we will see those numbers equalize and level off here when we go through the holiday seasons.
Couldn't agree with you more. That's why we've been pushing both the B part and the general fund balance to increase.
Yeah. The revenue for water and sewer, I remember hearing when we instituted the second meter for irrigation, that could have a negative impact on revenue. Is that
Haven't seen
seen?
Hadn't seen a bit of consumption slack off.
Okay. And do you foresee that we've seen the last of FEMA reimbursements? I was looking at the minutes from last meeting.
We're still cleaning up. and we do have some legal expenses that are pending and will be pending probably for some time. Those will be de minimis. Contrary to the guidance that we received earlier last month, we have been processing reimbursements at a steady pace. There has been, shall we say, a slowdown in the processing of those, but we haven't, on the state's end, not on our end, but we haven't had anyone to tell us know that it's cut off. As a matter of fact, we're awaiting the final inspection on the Irene portion of the projects and the reimbursement, and we have been waiting on that for about 6 weeks now.
So we haven't received that yet? The Irene?
The way that grant reimbursement program works is that they hold back 25% based on a final reimbursement inspection.
So that's
and
a significant number then.
well, it's about $100,000 for that Irene money. Yeah, Irene money. The of course, the final inspection on the big project, we're going to have to make sure that we got everything cleaned up before we ask for that final inspection. Elizabeth Street walkway, contrary to what I'd reported, I think a couple of months ago, of the intent to build a handicap ramp there, we weren't able to get it shoehorned in. There's not enough distance from the toe of the dune, the stable vegetation line. So what we've done is we've just rebuilt that old walkway with a significantly more robust structure there. Remind folks that bridge inspections will begin tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. going through Friday, mid-afternoon. There will be intermittent lane closures. So if you have an appointment, just be cognizant of the fact that it's going to be subject to those intermittent lane closures. We don't know how long intermittent means. In the past, it's been 15 to 30 minutes sometimes, but you should be able to do one lane and get by. Remind everyone that Friday, November the 10th is Veterans Day observed, and would like to put a plug in for the Veterans Day luncheon the day prior to, on the 9th of November. Please respond to RSVP to Christie by the 2nd, if you would be so kind. And Town Hall will be closed on the 10th, Veterans Day observed.
And that's at 12 noon, the luncheon?
Yes.
Speaking of bridge, have we notified DOT that the Turtle Sanctuary sign is broken in half? I don't know if that's their responsibility, but it's, last year it was a Holden Beach sign, this year apparently it's the Turtle Sanctuary.
I haven't. We can, though.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Is that it, Mr. Hewitt?
Yes, sir.
Mayor's comments are very short tonight. There are no comments. Thank you for being here. Mayor Pro Tem Fletcher.
We have a public comment? You certainly may.
Public comments. This isn't
I thought the Board of Commissioners' comments come
Public
first.
comment.
Yeah, public comments later.
That's later.
Is it later?
No, it's later.
Am I later?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
Can you
You're
wait? I'm very much appreciative that so many people showed up tonight, but when somebody unique is here, I'd like to recognize them, and I would like to recognize now our two-time former mayor, Mayor Norman Mears, and his beautiful wife Sally are back here with us. We welcome you to the meeting. We haven't seen you in a while, so we're really pleased to have you here for the meeting tonight. Thank you.
My turn? First, I want to apologize for the missing last month's meeting. It was even reported in the Beacon I read. But I was away on business, which is the reason I'm not running for reelection, because I don't like missing meetings that I'm responsible for. Director Clemens, I want to thank you and your staff for posting the confined space signs at the pump stations. I noticed that the other day. To me, that represents the right focus on personnel safety, because we have to address that before we address the structural problems with the sewer. So I appreciate you modeling that right behavior. That's all I have.
Mr. Freer.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, too. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's great to see a good crowd tonight. And I think it was, again, I'll repeat, the Citizen Advisory Committee did a great job. The sewer upgrade is proceeding, and hopefully we'll get that station number 4 upgraded as soon as possible. Thanks.
Mr. Kaiser.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's nice to see a large crowd. I want to remind everybody, early voting starts on the 19th, so don't forget to vote. A lot of people have fought and died to give you that privilege. Don't let them down. One other thing on the lane closures. I read in the paper today that the DOT is encouraging you to use an alternate route across the bridge.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly what that alternate route is, but if you find it, let me know. That's all I have.
That's a good one.
Number 18, public comments. Mr. Holden.
My name is Lynn Holden. We've been real fortunate the last few years. We've had no major hurricanes. But the time is going to come when we will have another one. And my question is, lately, the last year, with the hurricane in Texas and Florida, and now the fires out here in California, you hear about the looting. And this is an easy place to loot when it's tough. And I know the police do a great job, but 2 or 3 policemen on Holden Beach are no match for the looters. And my question is, I don't know if we have any program for that, because when the storm is starting to calm down, the looters don't wait till they get permission. They're over here before we get over here. The beach is about 7 miles long. And I think they need to have a program, something that will deter some of this looting. It's too late when the hurricane gets here. There's no program. And I think we need people up and down the beach as soon as possible, and it should be the residents of those houses up and down. I know the town has a regulation that you can't be on the beach. But as soon as that weather calms down and people can get on here, we need people on Holden Beach. After Hazel, my father had a pocket watch his mother gave him when he graduated from high school. When we got over here, the looters had been on Holden Beach, and they got his pocket watch. And it's that kind of stuff that really bugs me. And just a few days ago, they were talking about it in California. These people come back and the whole area is burnt down. The looters are out there getting your stuff before you get there. So I would like to, if we don't have a plan, I think we should have one. And I think you ought to incorporate the sheriff's department. They have these boats. And you should have somebody to be able to call as soon as that weather lets them put their boat in to ferry us some people over here and have people, especially in these canal sections. They can unload the whole canal in no time. You take 2, 3 people in boats, it'll be just that, and it's over with. So I think they could utilize the boats of the sheriff's department to patrol the area, but we need something besides our policemen. They have no chance to do that. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say about anything? Well,
I was gonna say the sheriff's department was.
They were.
Never too old.
I'm Dolly Mitchell, 132 Tarpon. I just know after Diana or one of those hurricanes, National Guard was called out and guarded our canal on that occasion. And I think Pat said the sheriff's department's boat was at the entrance of our canal this year. So.
Anyone else want to say anything about anything?
Yeah, I ran Ocean Isle last week, and the beer after the race was excellent.
Is there a motion we adjourn? Who made the motion? Mr. Flasker, second. Thanks for being here.